As moderator, I observe that the debate has shifted from the nature of dangerous speech to the fundamental nature of the authority judging it. Mill, speaking from the democratic skepticism of the 19th century, you capture the truth of institutional fallibility, warning that no human authority is immune to prejudice. Plato, speaking from the classical Greek pursuit of absolute truth, you capture the truth of epistemic hierarchy, recognizing that without an objective standard of the good, society descends into blind relativism. These perspectives reveal a profound paradox. A healthy society must protect its rational foundations from sophisticated poison, yet any institution granted the power to censor risks becoming the very tyrant it seeks to prevent. The true challenge lies in whether we can establish a standard for intellectual health that does not rely on the flawless virtue of a human censor. Plato, since Mill argues that enforcing this protection merely infantilizes the public and empowers flawed magistrates, how do you ensure your guardians do not succumb to the very passions and prejudices they are appointed to filter out?
Mill, your dread of corrupt magistrates perfectly describes Athens' 30 tyrants, yet true guardians are stripped of private wealth and trained solely to contemplate the eternal form of the good. Imagine a ship's navigator rendered deaf to the sirens, his eyes fixed entirely upon unchanging constellations. Does his guidance infantilize the crew or save them from the rocks of their appetites? You claim exposure to toxic sophistry builds moral muscle, but feeding citizens intellectual poison guarantees a corrupted soul, not a resilient one. Must we sacrifice civic harmony, hoping truth accidentally survives charismatic malice in your chaotic marketplace?
Notice how the clash between Plato's deafened navigator and Mill's open marketplace exposes a fundamental divide over the locus of moral authority. Plato, speaking from the aristocratic intellectualism of classical antiquity, you capture the truth of objective moral orientation, understanding that society requires an unchanging standard to prevent self-destruction. Mill, speaking from the democratic individualism of the 19th century, you capture the truth of developmental agency, recognizing that human faculties only mature through active struggle against falsehood. These perspectives are actually complementary moments of a higher civic ideal. A society requires a shared moral compass to avoid shipwreck, yet the citizens themselves must hold the wheel to remain truly free. The synthesis demands a mechanism that protects the community's foundational values from destructive sophistry without establishing an elite class of untouchable censors. Rousseau, since your 18th century egalitarianism rejects Plato's elitist guardians, but your fear of manipulative pride rejects Mill's unregulated marketplace, how exactly can the sovereign people collectively filter out hate speech without either surrendering their liberty to a magistrate or succumbing to the passions of a demagogue?
Mill, you correctly warn that delegating censorship to magistrates breeds tyranny, a tragedy I observed within Geneva's secretive aristocratic councils. Yet, imagine a rustic festival where a peddler unveils a gilded mirror, distorting neighbors into hideous beasts to incite spontaneous mockery. Do free citizens require Plato's armed guardians to smash it? Or does their ingrained civic affection cause them to simply ostracize the peddler naturally? The ultimate defense against hateful sophistry is not a coercive legal tribunal, but the cultivation of robust mores and civic religion that starves the vanity of amour propre without violating liberty. Plato, if your citizens constantly require deafened navigators to survive the sirens, does this not prove your republic has fundamentally failed to internalize the moral compass necessary for true freedom?
As moderator, I observe that Rousseau has brilliantly shifted the axis of our debate from legal coercion to social regulation. Plato, you capture the truth of structural protection, relying on the formal authority of guardians to banish dangerous rhetoric, while Rousseau, you capture the truth of organic community defense, relying on the informal authority of customs and social ostracism to starve hate speech. This difference reflects your eras. Plato's antiquity sought harmony through rigid hierarchical order, whereas Rousseau's 18th century republicanism envisioned a homogeneous community bound by shared civic affection. Yet, integrating these views reveals a new hidden danger. If we replace the coercive magistrate with the collective ostracism of the community, we might merely substitute state tyranny with the tyranny of the majority. The synthesis of communal self-regulation must confront the reality that a society unified by custom can be just as suffocating to minority voices as a dictator's decree. Mill, since your 19th century liberalism warned explicitly against the despotism of custom, is Rousseau's informal social ostracism of hate speech a valid democratic solution, or is it merely censorship disguised as civic virtue?
Rousseau, your reliance on informal social ostracism merely replaces the magistrate's iron shackles with the far more suffocating, invisible chains of public opinion, enforcing a despotism of custom. Imagine a pious village where a lone physician discovers their sacred healing spring actually contains deadly cholera. If the villager's civic affection spontaneously ostracizes him for blaspheming their traditions, does their organic consensus protect their harmony or merely guarantee their collective demise? You trust the community's customs to filter out malice, but this informal tyranny is more formidable than political oppression because it leaves no means of escape for minority truths. Plato's deafened navigator is dangerous, but surrendering the boundaries of speech to the blind collective prejudice of the majority destroys the very eccentricities from which human progress springs.
As moderator, I observe a profound tension between the preservation of social bonds and the protection of individual truth. Rousseau, speaking from the ideal of the intimate 18th century Genevan Republic, you capture the truth that a community must organically defend its shared moral fabric against malicious division. Mill, speaking from the sprawling, conformist mass society of 19th century Victorian England, you capture the truth that collective opinion often violently suppresses the very eccentricities needed for human progress. These perspectives synthesize when we distinguish between speech that merely offends a community's prejudices, like your cholera warning physician, and hate speech that actively seeks to destroy the equal civic standing of its members. True societal health requires protecting the former as a catalyst for truth, while recognizing the latter as a fundamental violation of the social contract itself. Plato, since your framework relies on objective reality rather than public opinion, how exactly can we distinguish between the noble gadfly who rightfully angers the majority with unpopular truth and the malicious sophist who merely poisons them with hate? True societal health requires protecting the former as a catalyst for truth, while recognizing the latter as a fundamental violation of the social contract itself.
Moderator, the distinction between the noble gadfly and the malicious sophist lies not in the offense they cause, but in their telos. The gadfly stings to awaken the soul to the eternal form of the good, whereas the sophist flatters the mob's basest appetites to acquire earthly power. Mill and Rousseau, you both trust the public to eventually discern this difference. But imagine a skilled pastry chef and a physician competing for authority before a jury of hungry children. The chef offers sweet, intoxicating candies that slowly rot the body, whereas the physician offers a bitter, painful tonic that cures a fatal disease. If we rely on Mill's unregulated marketplace or Rousseau's spontaneous civic consensus, the children will invariably crown the chef as their hero and execute the physician as a tyrant, precisely as the Athenian mob executed my teacher, Socrates. This reveals that hate speech is not merely a competing idea, but a sugary poison that actively destroys the very rational faculty required to evaluate it. If your systems structurally reward the flatterer who chains citizens to the shadows of the cave, how can we claim that absolute freedom of speech leads to truth rather than the ultimate enslavement of the soul?
As moderator, I observe that Plato has crystallized our debate around the concept of cognitive vulnerability, using the powerful analogy of the pastry chef and the physician. Plato, speaking from the historical trauma of democratic Athens executing Socrates, you capture the truth that human psychology is inherently susceptible to the sweet, bypassing poison of flattery and hatred. Mill, speaking from the optimistic rationalism of the 19th century, you capture the truth that cognitive immunity can only be built through active exposure, not enforced isolation. These perspectives reveal a profound developmental paradox. If citizens are perpetually protected like children, they will never mature. But if they are thrown into a marketplace of sophisticated hate speech without preparation, their rational faculties may be destroyed before they can develop. The synthesis suggests that society's role is neither to ban the pastry chef entirely, nor to abandon the children to his manipulation, but to actively cultivate the citizen's critical palate so they learn to desire the bitter medicine of truth. Rousseau, since your 18th century philosophy focused heavily on education and shaping civic desires, how can a republic successfully train its citizens to organically reject the demagogue's hateful poison without relying on Plato's authoritarian physician to force-feed them the cure?
I concede to Mill that corrupted customs will crucify the truth-teller, for I witnessed 18th century Parisian salons celebrate witty malice over sincere virtue. Yet, Plato, your pastry chef analogy, assumes citizens are permanently infantile, ignoring that institutions create this very dependence. Imagine youths raised in nature who drink only fresh spring water, compared to city infants forcefully fed honeyed wine by their masters. If the honey-addicted children violently reject the physician's bitter medicine, the fault lies not in their innate freedom, but in the unnatural society that deformed their palate. We defeat hate speech neither through Plato's armed censors nor Mill's chaotic marketplace, but through an education of natural consequences that prevents a more prop from taking root. Why do we endlessly debate how to muzzle corrupted men, instead of dismantling the social inequalities that make the demagogue's flattery so intoxicating?
As moderator, I observe that Rousseau has fundamentally shifted our central axis from the regulation of speech to the socio-economic conditions of the listeners. Plato, speaking from the rigid hierarchies of antiquity, you see human vulnerability to toxic rhetoric as an innate flaw requiring permanent guardianship. While Rousseau, speaking from the dawn of the Enlightenment's critique of feudal disparity, you see this vulnerability as a socially constructed addiction born from systemic inequality. These perspectives converge on a profound synthesis. The danger of hate speech lies not merely in the words themselves, but in the pre-existing material and psychological deprivation of the audience that makes demagogic flattery intoxicating. Words cause real harm precisely when they weaponize structural inequalities, suggesting that a truly free public forum cannot safely exist without a baseline of social justice and proper education. Yet this creates a severe paradox. If we must wait for perfect equality to safely permit free speech, we may be waiting forever under the rule of paternalistic censors. Mill, speaking from the stark industrial disparities of 19th century capitalism, how can your unregulated marketplace of ideas reliably produce truth if the citizens entering it have already been psychologically deformed by extreme inequality and lack the uncorrupted palate Rousseau describes?
Rousseau. While the 19th century industrial destitution I witness certainly distorts human judgment, silencing speech until society achieves perfect equality guarantees that such equality will never arrive. Imagine a factory owner who bans pamphlets exposing his toxic gin, claiming his exhausted workers' corrupted palates cannot yet handle bitter truths. Does this censorship protect the vulnerable or merely insulate the tyrant? Plato, permanently treating citizens as infants, ensures they never develop the faculties to discern medicine from poison. If magistrates dictate when the public is pure enough for truth, we surrender the very engine of reform.
As moderator, I observe a profound dialectical tension regarding the sequence of societal progress and the neutrality of speech. Mill, speaking from the rapid industrial reforms of 19th century England, you capture the truth that free speech is the indispensable tool for exposing and dismantling oppression. Rousseau, speaking from the entrenched aristocratic inequalities of the 18th century Ancien Régime, you capture the truth that without prior social equality, the free exchange of ideas merely empowers the privileged to manipulate the deprived. These two perspectives are actually complementary moments of a single democratic paradox. Free speech is required to achieve social justice, yet social justice is required for free speech to function without becoming toxic manipulation. The synthesis reveals that the marketplace of ideas is never truly neutral. When hate speech enters a deeply unequal society, it acts not as a competing proposition, but as an active mechanism of disenfranchisement that systematically silences the vulnerable. Plato, since your ancient Athenian context witnessed demagogues using unregulated speech to destroy democracy itself, how do we resolve this paradox where the absolute liberty of the malicious speaker results in the absolute enslavement of the vulnerable?
The paradox of absolute liberty resolving into absolute enslavement is precisely what I witnessed when Athenian demagogues used unchecked rhetoric to drown the city's reason. Imagine a chariot racing along a precipice. If we grant absolute freedom to the beasts, the violent dark horse of hatred will inevitably trample the disciplined white horse of reason and drag the charioteer into the abyss. Mill, you fear the magistrate's reins, and Rousseau, you blame the chariot's construction. But if you refuse to restrain the dark horse of malicious sophistry, do you not actively choose the soul's destruction? True liberty is never the license to inject poison into the public ear, but the structural mastery of truth over chaotic passions.
As moderator, I observe a profound dialectical tension between the ancient and modern definitions of liberty itself. Plato, speaking from the ancient Athenian paradigm, where freedom meant internal self-mastery over the passions, you capture the truth that a soul or a society consumed by the dark horse of hatred is fundamentally enslaved. Mill, speaking from the 19th century liberal tradition, you capture the truth that external freedom from state coercion is the absolute prerequisite for genuine human agency. These two perspectives are actually complementary. External non-interference becomes disastrous if citizens are internally enslaved by demagogic hatred. Yet internal mastery loses all moral value if it is forcefully imposed by an authoritarian magistrate. Hate speech exploits this exact gap, operating as an external liberty that intentionally destroys the listener's internal capacity for rational self-governance. Rousseau, since your philosophy attempts to reconcile the individual's natural freedom with the community's moral authority, how can the social contract cultivate citizens capable of holding their own reins against the dark horse of hate speech without recreating the oppressive magistrate Mill so deeply fears?
Moderator, Plato's dark horse of passion indeed threatens the Republic, and Mill's fear of the magistrate's whip is entirely justified. For I saw in 18th century France how absolute authority merely masks its own tyranny. Yet both of you ignore the societal architecture that breeds this madness. Imagine a locked, burning Parisian theater where vain aristocrats brutally trample one another to escape the flames, compared to a village of simple Swiss mountaineers who, facing the exact same fire, instinctively form a human chain to rescue their weakest. The demagogue's hate speech is merely the fire. It only incinerates a society that has already been atomized into selfish competitors by the unnatural inequalities of amour-propre. Mill obsesses over permitting every spark, while Plato demands an authoritarian fire chief. But if the social contract cultivates genuine material equality and shared sovereign duties, the civic body becomes damp tinder. Why must we choose between censorship and chaos when true democratic solidarity renders the sophist's flames entirely powerless?
As moderator, I observe that Rousseau has brilliantly reframed the debate from the policing of sparks to the flammability of the social fabric. Rousseau, speaking from the communal ideals of the 18th century Genevan Republic, you capture the truth that social solidarity and material equality naturally neutralize the venom of divisive rhetoric. Mill, speaking from the pluralistic individualism of 19th century Britain, you capture the truth that a society without intellectual friction is fundamentally vulnerable to ideological stagnation. These perspectives expose a profound dialectical tension between communal unity and individual diversity. Absolute solidarity makes hate speech powerless, but it might also extinguish the eccentricities and dissenting opinions necessary for human advancement. If a society is engineered to be perfectly damp tinder to resist the demagogue's destructive fire, it structurally risks becoming equally immune to the reformer's illuminating spark. Mill, how can a society maintain the robust structural solidarity Rousseau envisions without accidentally suffocating the vital, often offensive, dissenting speech that your philosophy deems essential for uncovering truth?
Moderator, the engineered solidarity Rousseau praises as damp tinder perfectly describes the suffocating despotism of custom I witnessed in Victorian England, where majority consensus routinely extinguished eccentric genius to maintain a stagnant social harmony. Imagine a perfectly egalitarian utopian commune facing a hidden crop blight. If a lone abrasive botanist violently mocks their sacred farming traditions to warn them, and the community silences him to preserve their comfortable solidarity, does their damp tinder protect them, or merely ensure they starve together in peaceful ignorance? Plato and Rousseau falsely assume that societal resilience requires shielding the collective mind from friction. Yet true cognitive vigor is forged exclusively in the crucible of unrestricted, offensive contestation. If we truly achieve Rousseau's egalitarian society, why must we still fear the sophist's flame, unless we secretly share Plato's authoritarian premise that human beings are permanently incapable of rational self-governance?
Notice how Mill's defense of the abrasive botanist exposes a profound dialectical clash regarding the inherent durability of human reason across different historical eras. Mill, speaking from the suffocating social conformity of Victorian England, you capture the vital truth that intellectual friction and offensive dissent are the absolute prerequisites for cognitive vigor and societal survival. Plato, speaking from the trauma of ancient Athens, where unregulated demagogues manipulated the public into executing Socrates, you capture the truth that certain forms of malicious speech are not merely offensive propositions, but psychological poisons that actively dismantle the listener's capacity for rational judgment. These perspectives point toward a necessary synthesis. A genuinely free society must fiercely protect the painful friction of the truth-teller, while recognizing that hate speech often functions entirely outside the realm of truth-seeking, aiming instead to destroy the very rational faculties that make democratic deliberation possible. The potential blind spot in Mill's marketplace is the assumption that the public, regardless of their era, can always rationally distinguish the harsh botanist from the manipulative sophist. Plato, since Mill accuses your demand for censorship of stemming from a permanent authoritarian distrust of human self-governance, how do you prove that even an educated, egalitarian society remains eternally vulnerable to the dark horse of destructive rhetoric?
Mill, your botanist appeals to reason, but the sophist bypasses intellect to intoxicate the appetites, a permanent vulnerability within the tripartite human soul. Imagine perfectly educated athletes. If a cunning confectioner offers poisoned pastries mimicking addictive honey, their prior health cannot override their innate cravings. You assume equality eradicates base desires, yet I watched Athens collapse because absolute freedom elevated the lowest passions over sovereign reason. Hate speech is not a debatable proposition, but an addictive narcotic. If we never restrain the confectioner, do we not willingly surrender to psychological tyranny?
The tension between Plato's poisoned pastry and Mill's abrasive botanist reveals a fundamental disagreement about the cognitive mechanics of speech across different historical eras. Mill, speaking from the 19th century culture of the printing press, you capture the truth that written text allows for the delayed, rational processing of highly offensive ideas. Plato, speaking from the visceral, immediate oral culture of the ancient Athenian assembly, you capture the truth that live rhetorical performance often acts as an addictive psychological force that entirely bypasses the intellect. These perspectives expose the dual nature of human communication. Speech is simultaneously a transfer of rational information and an exertion of emotional power. The synthesis suggests that hate speech is uniquely destructive precisely because it masquerades as a debatable proposition, while operating as a narcotic, weaponizing our innate psychological vulnerabilities against our own reason. Rousseau, if Plato is correct that human beings possess a permanent, innate appetite for the poisoned pastry of hatred, can your egalitarian social contract truly rewire human nature to resist this psychological addiction? Or must the general will actively ban the malicious confectioner to ensure the republic's survival?
Moderator, I concede to Plato that civilized man craves the poisoned pastries of malice, an addiction I witnessed in the vanity-driven salons of 18th century Paris. Mill and Plato, you both mistake this artificial disease of amour-propre for man's eternal nature. Imagine starving hounds trapped in a barren pit. If a spectator throws down tainted meat, they will violently consume the poison, whereas those same hounds in a bountiful forest would instinctively ignore the rot. We argue endlessly over whether to gag the malicious spectator or blindly trust the hound's reason, But why do we accept the pit as our natural dwelling? The general will does not tyrannically ban hate speech. By dismantling the structural inequalities that breed resentment, it heals the civic starvation that makes the demagogue's poison appetizing in the first place.
As moderator, I observe a fascinating dialectical shift regarding the root cause of our susceptibility to dangerous speech. Rousseau, speaking from the stark inequalities of 18th century Europe, you capture the vital truth that systemic deprivation creates the psychological vulnerability to demagoguery. Mill, speaking from the democratic expansions of 19th century Britain, you capture the truth that even relatively equal societies can enforce a suffocating orthodoxy through majority consensus. These perspectives reveal a profound tension between structural health and intellectual liberty. While an egalitarian society might indeed resist the demagogue's poison, the collective maintenance of this bountiful forest risks suppressing any dissenting voice that disrupts communal harmony. If the community's general will becomes the ultimate arbiter of what constitutes tainted meat versus bitter medicine, we potentially replace Plato's authoritarian magistrate with the invisible tyranny of the majority. Mill, if Rousseau's structural equality truly healed the societal starvation that makes hate speech appetizing, would your abrasive botanist still be necessary? Or does the very mechanics of human progress require us to permanently risk exposure to the sophist's poison?
Moderator. Rousseau's egalitarian, bountiful forest actually renders the abrasive botanist even more vital, as I observed in 19th century England that material comfort frequently breeds a complacent, tyrannical orthodoxy. Imagine a perfectly engineered greenhouse where every flower receives equal nourishment. If a foul-smelling weed sprouts to warn that their shared soil is secretly decaying, do the harmonious gardeners uproot it to preserve their beautiful symmetry, or endure its offensive spores to test the truth? Rousseau assumes equal citizens naturally embrace wisdom, yet this overlooks how unchallenged consensus inevitably masquerades as absolute infallibility. By structurally eliminating all disruptive friction to prevent Plato's poison, do we not merely trade the acute fever of demagoguery for the irreversible necrosis of intellectual stagnation?
As moderator, I observe that Mill has centralized our debate around a crucial axis: the profound difference between the discomfort of a diagnostic warning and the destruction of a psychological pathogen. Mill, speaking from the complacent middle-class conformity of 19th century Victorian England, you capture the truth that a society without the friction of foul-smelling weeds will inevitably succumb to the necrosis of intellectual stagnation. Plato, speaking from the chaotic collapse of the Athenian democracy, you capture the opposing truth that certain rhetoric acts not as a bitter medicine, but as an active poison that bypasses reason to destroy the soul. These perspectives reveal a dialectical unity. The preservation of a republic requires both the absolute freedom to diagnose societal decay and the structural defense against speech that annihilates our capacity for rational deliberation. However, this synthesis creates a new fatal tension. If the weed of hate speech simultaneously contains both a harsh truth about societal resentment and a narcotic poison that incites violence, the line between saving the greenhouse and destroying it vanishes entirely. Plato, since Mill insists that even your enlightened philosopher kings would become tyrants of orthodoxy without this offensive friction, how exactly can a state accurately distinguish between speech that merely disrupts our complacency and speech that genuinely poisons the republic?
To distinguish the botanist's bitter medicine from the demagogue's deadly poison, we must examine the speech's target. Does it challenge the rational intellect or deliberately inflame the soul's darkest appetites? Imagine a master luthier and a deaf madman both violently striking a lyre. the luthier strikes harshly to tune the dissonant strings, whereas the madman smashes the instrument entirely to enjoy the chaotic noise. Mill, you conflate the luthier's painful tuning with the madman's destruction, ignoring how demagogues like Cleon bypassed Athenian reason to whip our assembly into a bloodthirsty frenzy. Hate speech is not a proposition seeking truth, but psychological violence that shatters the rational faculties required for your cherished debate. Are we so terrified of the magistrate's gag that we willingly hand the madman a hammer and call it liberty?
As moderator, I observe a profound dialectical tension regarding the inherent fragility of human rationality. Plato, speaking from the volatile, direct democracy of ancient Athens, you capture the truth that malicious speech can act as a madman's hammer, actively destroying the psychological capacity for public deliberation. Mill, speaking from the institutional stability of 19th century Britain, captures the opposing truth that granting any authority the power to identify the madman inevitably leads to the silencing of the painful but necessary luthier. The synthesis of these views suggests that the true danger of hate speech depends not merely on the speaker's intent, but on the structural resilience of the society receiving it. Rousseau, speaking from the deep systemic inequalities of 18th century France, if your social contract successfully creates a structurally healthy citizenry, does the madman's hammer still possess the power to shatter the public's reason? Or does true equality render Plato's censorship entirely unnecessary?
Moderator. In a republic, united by the general will, the madman's hammer strikes unyielding stone, rendering Plato's censorship unnecessary. Imagine an arsonist hurling a torch. Against a solid masonry fortress, it harmlessly starves, but against a mansion of rotting wood, it triggers an inferno. Mill defends the arsonist's liberty, and Plato demands his execution. Yet both ignore that hate speech's power stems entirely from the combustible decay of inequality I witnessed in 18th century Europe. Why obsess over policing the sparks when we must rebuild our institutions with the fireproof masonry of true egalitarian solidarity?